That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Welcome to Beyond Stereotypes, a podcast about lawyers using their authentic voices to change the world.
I've had to deal with the notion, quite frankly, that I'm not as smart as. It's an interesting concept. And by the way, you deal with that notion as you progress to levels. In other words, the presumption is not there that you are. So you go through Country Day. Once you get through Country Day and you go to Harvard, nobody at Country Day is talking about you're not as smart as.
Right.
But there are people thinking it. Okay? You go to Harvard, you get through Harvard, and you have success in your life. No one's talking about, hey, you weren't really Harvard material. You should never have gotten there. So every part of my journey has been rife with stereotypes.
Welcome to Beyond Stereotypes. I'm your host, Merle Vaughn. Here to BS with me today is Ernest Greer, whose story I find fascinating and who will no doubt inspire all of you to embrace your authenticity. Hey, Ernest, how are you?
Hey, Merle, I'm fantastic. And yourself?
I'm good. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. So we're just going to have a conversation here. It's been a while since you and I have caught up, and I think that on this podcast we like to inspire folks to be their authentic selves. We like to talk to them about how to overcome adversity and how to overcome stereotypes. And I can't think of anybody who is a better example of that than you.
Oh, thank you, Merle.
Yeah, so let's have some
I will
fun.
share. I promise you to share what I can. In my most authentic self, and I hope I can be helpful.
I have no doubt that you will do that, Ernest. So just let me tell the audience a little bit about you. Ernest is the co-president of Greenberg Traurig, which he joined in 2000. Greenberg Traurig is an international firm that has 2,800 attorneys in 49 locations. And I will say that there are tons of accolades and honors that Ernest has gotten over the years and continues to get. There are way too many to recite. So, as he once said when I first met him and I asked him something, he said, Merle, just Google me. And I love that. Just Google me. So I encourage all of you to Google Ernest Greer. Ernest attended Harvard University undergrad and Northwestern University Pritzker School of Law. He is a commercial litigator who lives in Atlanta with his beautiful wife, Patrice. I know he has 2 daughters and 1 amazingly gorgeous granddaughter. What did I miss, Ernest?
That my daughter
just
started her second year as a lawyer in Chicago.
Oh, nice. Not with Greenberg, apparently.
No, with Sidley.
Okay.
And that it is interesting being in a common profession and some of the things that I believe in and I feel, how do I articulate them to her ultimately in a way that she can better herself for having heard it.
Okay. That's so congratulations on 2 fronts there, the lawyer and the grandbaby.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to start these talks by giving you an opportunity to kind of tell us your story, like where you're from, who raised you, who's your biggest influence, just kind of your story. How did you get from where did you come and how did you get where you are?
Well, look, Merle, I as you will recall, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and At about 6 years old, we moved to the first western suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. Maybe actually when I was 4, about to be 5, and my father happened to come into our then apartment building in St. Louis, and there was a person who was on drugs, had done a heroin shot with a needle and was passed out. And my father went upstairs and told my mother, "We got to get out of here." And my mom and father then hashed a plan. My father had been in the military, and through the benefit of the GI Bill, we were able to move out with basically no type of down payment. And so I grew up in University City. That's the city where the St. Lunatics and Nelly are from, where Bernard Gilkey, former New York Mets, uh, uh, St. Louis Cardinal, baseball player, and a host of other people. And I grew up in an all-black community, a community that at one point had been a white community, and as blacks moved in, um, the whites in the community saw fit to move out. And
Right.
it was a fairly stable community. And I lived in a community in which there was an elementary school where we walked to school. It took me about 200 steps to get to my elementary school, and that was when community-based schooling was critically important. So I grew up in a really loving environment. My father was a teacher. My mom was a file clerk, and eventually she moved up through her system to become deputy director of the hospital healthcare management system for the then county hospital system. My parents stressed education, and they stressed the vision, quite frankly, that anything we want to do in life, we can achieve it. We struggled financially, like many families, but we did not live a day in which my brother and I felt that financial struggle. We had clothes, we had food, we just didn't have many extras. And we grew up in an environment in which, though we lived in the county, my parents saw fit to have us enrolled in and play in various sports leagues within the inner city. That ended up being really critical to my development. And um, after graduating from elementary school, we went to a junior high school. And then in ninth grade, right before ninth grade, my godmother suggested to my mother that I was a gifted student and that we should pursue private schools. I
Mm-hmm.
go out to a school called St. Louis Country Day in June of that year, July of that year, telling them that we wanted to be part of the class in September. And they say, "Well, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come take a test in the fall for the next calendar year." And so we're about to leave, and all of a sudden, our headmaster, John Johnson, walks out and says, "Hey, while you're here, why don't you take the test?" So I go and I take the test, and about 2 days later, they call and they say, "Well, we want your son to join." That was a hard push. My parents said, "Well, we can only afford so much." Each of my parents got a second job, and they ended up paying $1,000 for a $3,500 a year tuition. Within 3 days, I realized something that nobody ever told me. And this was a class of 51 students. I realized
Mm-hmm.
that I was the only black in my class. And
It took 3 days for that.
the reason it took 3 days is because we only had 10 to 12 students per class. And so I
Mm.
had to cycle through the classes. I had to cycle through lunches. And that was my story. I was able to attend St. Louis Country Day in ninth grade, and then things just sort of evolved from there.
Wow. Wow. And so in terms of, in your graduating class, were you the only black student still?
Well, the second year that I was there, another black student joined, and that black student happened to be my mother's boss, this son. And of course, being in private school, many of the meetings that mothers would have, I went to all boys school. Many of the meetings were during the morning at 10 o'clock, 9:30, at those times. And so my mother really needed to have an institution and a boss that was supportive of that because many of my fellow students' mothers worked inside the home. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
have external jobs. And so through that process of support, my mom's boss became very interested in the institution, and her son ended up joining me, and we graduated in '84, and we were both we were the only two black students in the class.
And so, how many in your class? How many kids in your class went to Harvard?
I think my senior year there, well, certainly I did.
Right.
Okay. Um, I'm trying to think if anybody else in my class did. No, but people went to Stanford and Princeton and things of that sort. But I don't recall having another student. Nobody else in my class went to Harvard. I was the only one that year.
Okay, and did anybody, like they do these days, did anybody give you any grief or give you a hard time or insist that it, was only affirmative action or anything like that?
Well, no, but I'll tell you this. There are a couple of reasons. One, that was back in the day where you could go into an office, and it was our curriculum office or whatever for college advancement, and they would have on a blind basis a list of schools and what the test scores and the grades were for those who had gotten into a certain school.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of knew what my metrics needed to be
Mm-hmm.
based upon those blind numbers. And they're not really blind because you say, well, 5 people have gone and this person went this year, that year, whatever. I hit those numbers. I
Right.
excelled athletically. We won the state championship my senior year. I was voted the most valuable player of all the state players that year.
That
And
was
so, yes,
football, right?
that was
Was
for
that
football.
mm-hmm.
Football. And though I had athletic ability, the thing that people really focused on was that I was a good student I was a good student, that I was in the top of my class.
So you go to Harvard.
Hmm.
That had to be what probably wasn't that much of a culture shock because you're going to this private school.
Well, but let
How
me
did
tell you, go ahead.
go no, go ahead.
I was going to say it was a culture shock because, look, uh, I never rode on an airplane until I was being recruited by a team of two to school of two to play college sports.
Mm,
And in fact, I was going to take a scholarship, and my mom came to me one day and said, "Don't you do that." I said, "Mom, I don't have any choice. You guys can't pay for me to go to Harvard." She says, "I don't care. We're going to figure that out. You always said you were going to Harvard. You've been saying you're going to go to Harvard since you was in second or third grade,
wow.
and that's where you should go." And so my parents, again, went and re-upped to 3 jobs,
Mm,
okay, because they had 2 in high school, right? Went
mm-hmm.
and re-upped to 3 jobs so that they could be able to pay for that school. And after the first year, um, the money kind of ran dry. And I remember this Congressman Clay, and Congressman Clay, congressman out of Missouri, has a son who followed him. My father, on a humbug, just called Congressman Clay's office because my father didn't know anything else to do. And Congressman Clay, my father got an opportunity to talk to him, and Congressman Clay found a lender. I guess today we would call it a hard money lender
Mm-hmm.
that loaned my parents the money for me to go back to school my sophomore year.
Wow. Wow.
So it was a journey, and
Right.
it's been a journey. And part of
Right.
that journey, and it goes deeper. It goes to within the first week I was at Country Day, I ran past a guy who was trying to get to the water fountain, and he called me a nigger.
Mm,
And at that moment, Merle, growing up the way I grew up, playing sports in the inner city, my first reaction was, it's about to go down. But I realized something real quickly, that if I did that, I knew that I would be removed from the school. He had history. He had equity. He had been
Right.
there. His father was chairman of the corporate practice of a global firm. I knew, and it's amazing how things work. Real quickly, I analyzed that, and I always remember that feeling. And that's an important feeling because that's a helplessness feeling that I try as I lead to make sure people don't feel, etc. But I knew at that moment that I couldn't do anything. I had to swallow it, and I had to do what my parents working 2 jobs to allow me to have this opportunity. I had to do it, and I had to move it forth. And that stays with me even today in terms
Wow.
of the sacrifice, and for that sacrifice, what I have to achieve, what I have to accomplish, what impacts I have, what authenticity, you know. But that was a big moment for me.
Wow. And so let's talk about so you went to law school, but let's talk about what stereotypes you feel like you had to overcome, because when I said, well, how what role did affirmative action play, clearly in your case you didn't need it. You didn't even get, and people would probably assume that you had a free ride, and you didn't. So what kind of stereotypes do you feel like you encountered that you overcame, and did that have any impact on your journey?
Well, look, I've been called as a young person a backslapper. You know, if you're a gregarious person, dress well, um, looking the part is something that's always been fundamentally important to me. I believe what Deion Sanders says: look good, dress good, play good. I believe
Mm-hmm.
in that. I believe in positive affirmation. And because I believed in that as at a young age, people saw me as being quote unquote fancy, a backslapper. So I had to deal with that. I've had to deal with the notion, quite frankly, that I'm not as smart as. It's an interesting concept. And by the
Hmm.
way, you deal with that notion as you progress to levels. In other words, the presumption is not there that you are. So you go through Country Day. Once you get through Country Day and you go to Harvard, nobody at Country Day is talking about you're not as smart as. But there are
Right.
people thinking it. Okay, you go to Harvard, you get through Harvard, and you have success in your life. No one's talking about, hey, you weren't really Harvard material. You should never have gotten there. So every part of my journey has been rife with stereotypes,
Right.
right? And I don't necessarily focus on it, but at this point, but I know that continued elevated success is the only way to fully deal with them. It's the quick solution. Otherwise, you get mired into trying to fend off a lot of things that's sort of scattering at you. And so, not being as smart, being a backslapper, not digging in, uh, not working hard enough, all the things that would come with um, with what you would imagine.
Well, and you're a very, like you said, gregarious and personable person. And so I would imagine that people assume you don't work hard, and that you haven't worked hard, that you've used that EQ and just that natural um, personality that honestly most people don't have, you know. That you've used that to your benefit as opposed to all the other things that you just talked about that you actually had.
Well, and I appreciate that, Merle. And let me tell you something about the law that works real well, right? If you get it right, I can have that personality, but it's also a metric driven business. So I can have that personality. If they see that personality and they see 23, 2,500 hours, they say, wow, this guy works hard. If they see
Mm-hmm.
that personality and see that, hey, he's brought in this client, this revenue, wow, this guy brings it in. And so there are people who may feel that, you know, of course, but the law in a certain way helps to minimize those things if and when people get to the numbers. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. 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 If they actually, if that's if it's transparent and it's being shared, right?
Exactly. Exactly. No question about it. And we know that all numbers are not shared in a system. But what I'm saying, you know, for for example, here at my institution, one of the reasons that I've been able to be successful because the people who really needed to know knew,
Right.
right? And by the way, I would be the last to tell you, and I'd be the first to tell you that I put a little extra effort in everything I do because I know that I'll have to I deal with that stereotype. And you've known me, Merle, you know my personality. Nobody's gonna outwork me,
Right.
you know.
But nobody's gonna have more fun either.
Yeah, of course. you know, of course, you gotta have fun with it, right? And you're right. I have a what I like to say a full life.
So you are you familiar with the concept of um oh shoot, I just lost the word, the concept of like having to code switch. Are you familiar with the concept of code switching?
Yes, I'm
Do
familiar
you,
with it.
I've never seen you do that, but then I may have always been in certain,
I've never done it
situ.
in my life. I've never
Okay,
done it
that
in my
was my
life.
question.
I
That
have
was my
never
question.
done it in my life, and I will never do it in my life. It's fundamentally problematic to me because if I were to do that, then I am not respecting and giving grace and thanks to all my parents did to get me here. My parents couldn't code switch. They working 3 jobs. You got 6 jobs in a household. How can they code switch like they have money and they have prominence? Everything I ever did at St. Louis Country Day, if we went to someone's house and they were cooking, my father was in the kitchen with the staff. I learned that. I saw that. So code switching is something that I believe is one of the most disrespectful things that I could do for all that my parents fought for me to be able to be because they feel great about me. They raised me. They taught me my values. They taught me the difference between right and wrong. And so if I live in that, I will never forget how I was in the last conversation with this person, what I said, what I didn't say. I try to be consistent with who I am all the time.
And brother, let me tell you, you are, and that's one of the things that I really have always admired about you. I think it's probably why we've always gotten along too, because I don't do it either.
And look, I talked to DB, I notable Renaissance man, and
Yeah.
same old, same old.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and I interviewed Derek. By DB, he means Derek Boss. And I think Derek might have been my first interview
Oh, cool.
4 years ago for this podcast. And and we all have different upbringings, obviously similarities, but the idea of being able to be authentic and be proud of that and hold your head up and you know just kind of be willing to say take me as I am, because if you do, you're going to be better off.
Exactly.
So what does it mean to be a co-president? Break that down for me. I have no idea what that means.
Well, I mean, in our structure, one thing you got to understand is that we're a corporation, okay, with
Mm-hmm.
shareholders. So it's no different than a company that has a structure that has an executive chairman, a CEO, and co-presidents. And we do over $2.6 billion a year. It's professional services. It's selling time. It's not selling a $50,000 car and getting $50,000 revenue. It's choppy revenue in the terms of $1,000 here, 500 there. And so my role in terms of my co-president, Brad Kaufman, is focused on professional development and associate elevation in the firm. I'm
Mhm.
focused on the day-to-day operation of the firm, including financial management, including branding, marketing, including recruiting and things of that sort, and then having executive visibility and leadership over a number of key offices, one including Washington, D.C. So
Mhm.
my job day to day is to really focus on revenue, driving revenue, whether it's through industry groups, practice groups, making sure that we have the right complement of professionals and talent and the right complements of practices and sub-practices such that we can put a whole solution that brings value to our respective clients. So again, my day-to-day, if I were to say what it is, it's focused on revenue. How do we drive revenue?
And do you still have a legal practice that you're focused on?
I have a legal practice from the standpoint that I do have a couple of matters that are that require my attention in terms of being the lead, being involved in strategy. I still have the complete ensemble of clients that I had for a number of years, and I still play a key role in managing those efforts. But remember this, Merle, I've been co-president for about 8 years.
Has it been
Uh,
that long? Wow.
2005, it was announced, and it became effective January 1, 2016. And so what I was doing in 15 or 16 and 17 is more evolved in 2025. So I do a little bit of everything.
Okay. Okay. And so what do you think? Well, one thing I'll say is, probably most people probably know, but your firm was started by a group of folks, I think it was Cubans, right, who couldn't
No, no,
get,
no.
no?
It was three Jewish men.
Jewish. Okay.
Yeah, and my firm had the first Cuban in a in a in a what was then considered a large firm, which
Hmm.
and I think Cesar Alvarez was our ninth or 10th lawyer. And
Okay.
of course, he eventually became CEO of the firm. So he was the first Cuban CEO of a major firm in the United States.
Okay. And so the firm was started by some folks who felt like they were not, accepted, I think, and who
Exactly right.
didn't feel like they belonged, and so they thought, we'll start our own thing. And so the firm has a history of, for whatever term you want to use, kind of DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Yep.
and has built on that. And I've noticed that you guys are still out there prominently talking about that with this, current climate and the change in administration and all that. Do you anticipate that changing at all?
What we talk about?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't anticipate at all. In fact, Merle, we're saying more. We're doing it more creatively, and we're driving more value to the clients. You see, when these three men started this firm in 1967, they started because they were well credentialed, but traditional firms wouldn't hire them because they were Jewish.
Right.
So that's why they hired the first Cuban, probably, because for them, it wasn't about white, black, Cuban, whatever. It was about giving people who deserved who deserved opportunity an opportunity. So today, when you look at us, many institutions have a DEI director. Let me tell you, we have a robust department. We have people that play various roles in the department. And what I'm proud of is that the person who leads our DEI is Nikki Lewis Simon, who was a partner and remains a partner in the firm, that the firm made the investment, and she was gracious enough to agree to it, to transition from day-to-day practice to lead this effort, which quite frankly we started many years ago. We started it probably 12, 13 years ago, because up until then, we were the firm that says we don't have to have a DEI committee. We have diversity. Because
Right.
even this day, we have more black lawyers at our firm than any other law firm. We have more Cubans at our firm than Hispanics at our firm than any other law firm. We're in the top 5, top 7 as it relates to women. We're in the top 5 to 7 as it relates to LGBTQ. But we also realize that when you start getting our scale, you have to bring some degree of centralization and strategy. And then, of course, as we moved outside the United States, we had to look at Mexico's issues. And so we do that.
Mm-hmm.
We had to look at the issues in Poland. We do that. We had to look at the issues in Asia, and we do that. And so not only do we have Nikki, we have a woman by the name of Deborah Sidnor. Deborah Sidnor was a partner at Alston and Bird who decided she wanted to do diversity and inclusion. So again, the firm steps up, makes the investment to not have people simply moving flags, but really having been practicing lawyers, understanding the issues that exist in law firms' elevation, understanding the issues that exist in law firm opportunities and productivity, and working with our lawyers to address those issues in a partnership way, because they too were lawyers or are lawyers. They understand the strains and the demands. And then, of course, they bring great value with the clients, because the clients would like to talk to people who really understand the business. So the point here is that we have invested in the past, we have and remain diverse today, we're making the investments today, and we will continue to make those investments, because those investments are highly valued by us as an institution, and they're highly valued by clients who feel that through those investments and the partnerships and connectivity, that there's benefit, tangible benefits that they see in the quality of service that we deliver to them. And that's real talk.
Right. So, Ernest,
Mhm.
we've talked about your legal career. We've talked about, your upbringing and all that. What do you do for fun?
You know, it's all about perspective. I would have told you 3 years ago that I don't get to do much for fun. Uh, but I've come to realize I enjoy chilling at the house.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy spending time with my wife, and I enjoy spending time with my friends. I now travel a little bit, my wife and I in particular, and that's what I do.
So, where was the last place you went?
I went to the St. Regis at Riviera Maya. So
Is that
this past year, I went to St. Bart's. I went to Lake Como. I went to the south of France. I went to Africa, and I went to the St. Regis Riviera Maya. And I put this in perspective to you. It wasn't until 2014 that I took my first vacation with just me and my wife. It was the first time in 2014 we went to Italy that I did not work for 7 days.
wow.
And we went on this vacation. This couple ended up joining us at the last minute, and I had fun. That was my first taste of I like this.
Right? I remember being on a my Taylor, obviously Taylor, my daughter, and she, when she was in high school, she was a performer, and they performed at the Fringe in Edinburgh, Scotland. And on the way back, she and I were on a plane, and we were going to stop in London. And I just remember saying to myself in that moment, this is why you work.
Why you
It
work?
just hit me. This is why you work. This experience, having experiences is why you work. You want to be good at it. You want to do good things. You want to be recognized and all that. But in the end, the reason you make money is for experiences.
Hmm. No question about it, right? But you got to get to the point where you feel that you control your future, meaning whether you're at a firm or not at a firm, right? I talk about that in terms of having freedom, so that every dollar you have, you don't say, well, I need this dollar in case X happens. See, as a
Right.
young lawyer, I knew that I was straight up. I knew that I could be interpreted. I was always self-aware. And because I searched for freedom and I desired to have freedom, I always knew that it could come that day where I was asked to leave or gently pushed out, right?
Right.
I always talk about the experience where I had a partner call me in the office at another firm and tell me that everything about me was black. I was too black. I was stirring up racial unrest, and he wanted me to know that I would never be a partner in his firm. Okay,
Wow.
just and let me tell you something. That's that other moment, right? I talked about the main moment at the fountain. I talked about this moment, and that firm was a more institutional firm where they chose where you played on the field. And that's when I realized I will never put myself in a position because when that happened, I remember going home and staring up in the sky. My wife was pregnant with my second child. My first child was whatever. And I remember staring at that sky and say, wow, have I messed this up, in terms of being able to provide for my family? I just remember that. Went on for a couple of days. And I decided there, then and there, I was going to have my own practice. I was going to follow the rules as the rules should be followed, but I was going to make sure that I pushed the rules so that they aligned with what I needed to have my freedom. And that was that I needed a platform that allowed me to be entrepreneurial, a platform that was going to support me and put wind beneath my wings, such that I would never again be called in somebody's office. And when I went and asked for support of the firm, I had somebody look at me and say, well, what can I do? He's my boss. But I'll
Right.
tell you something, how good it is. About 12 years ago, that guy called me and asked me to have, 15 years ago, asked me to have drinks. And he told me he failed me. So
Mm.
14 years later, he told me he failed me. I appreciated that. We had a matter recently, and he was on the other side, and it was being arbitrated in our building here. And in the past year, he told me, he said, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you. Of all
Wow.
the lawyers that have ever worked with me or come up through me, you're way, way the most successful of them all. And I want to tell you I'm proud of you, right?
You
And
should
so,
have you should have told them, well, you propelled that.
well, that was the one who I asked for help, and he said, well, what can
Oh,
I do?
oh, I
You know,
see.
that
I
so
see.
again, I felt helpless. And so this urge of this helplessness that I felt probably on another occasion, if I think about it, has spurred me to say, I am going to be who I am. I'm willing to do the work that is required for me to have a voice. I'm going to exercise my voice. I'm going to empower. I'm going to develop. And I'm going to live not in fear.
Yeah. I mean, it is always amazing to me, how many people don't understand that. And we're all different, and but the idea that you you know shrink or try to look or act just like other people because you think that or just be a yes person, right? Because you think that that's going to get you where, further. And I really don't, I believe that that is further from the truth. I think that people actually, not everybody, but most people appreciate someone who's going to tell them the truth, who's going to be honest with them, who's going to be candid, and who's going to be themselves. And I'm a believer in differences. Being different is good.
Well, I agree with that too. And, um, I'm seeing it more and more and more of these young folks not taking ownership of their careers. I tell people all the time, I'm particularly talking law, I tell them all the time, people don't move up in a law firm. Not what happens. People don't move up in corporations. People are pulled up. And so you have to put yourself in a position, whether it's you work harder than anybody else, whether it's you're smarter than anybody else, whether it's you're bringing in work, whether it's community, you've got to put something in the system that differentiates you, that shows your individuality. So someone says, that's interesting on our platform. I need to keep an eye on that.
Exactly.
And then you get pulled up. Walking in the
Exactly.
path, wearing the same thing. As I tell people all the time, why does everybody wear the same Brooks Brothers suits? Where's any
Right.
originality on that?
Right.
I tell young people, and I say this all the time. Look, you're not in college anymore. You're wearing khakis from college. This is a grown folk business. Go to a grown folk store. I understand you want to pay your loans off, but make an investment in yourself. So
there's always a sale rack everywhere.
Yeah. Well, but let me tell you something. What lawyers are making these days, they don't know. They don't need a sale rack.
I don't know. I'm always gonna go to the sale rack. That's
but
that's
I'm talking
ingrained
about
in me.
I'm talking about these big firm lawyers, Merle, and I'm talking about these young associates like my daughter. She's not going to the sale rack. She's trying to go to her mom and daddy's pocket.
Well, I was gonna say that's because she was raised by you. That's why she's not, or Patrice. That's why she's not going to the sale rack. But
Yeah.
Anyway, we can debate the value of a good sale another day. So Ernest, this has been fascinating and so fun, and I really appreciate your taking the time to do this. Do you have like any kind of, and you just kind of did this, but do you have, especially with, kind of what not everybody kind of not knowing what is ahead of us for the next 4 years, do you have any kind of sage advice that you would give, particularly, I think, lawyers of color, people of color, about, moving forward and staying, authentic, but and also continuing their success?
Yeah, the most important advice that I can give is that you got to be consistent with who you are. You have to realize that you have to look yourself in the mirror every day.
Yep.
And you have to realize that institutions have gotten very big, and every institution is looking for something to be on its platform that is positive that it doesn't have. And one of the most important things that the institution um, 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 is looking for is how can that thing make it stronger? And so be your authentic self, be the individual, because ultimately, if you get to the partnership and you haven't been your authentic self and you think becoming partner is going to allow you to be your authentic self, you're mistaken.
Right.
They're going to say, who did we elevate? This isn't the person we thought they would be. So it's a process in which the firm is trying to get to know you. Should this person be our partner? You're trying to get to know the firm. Do I want to be their partner? And the best way to do that is to create the good tension of this is who I am. Am I acceptable for what we're trying to do and what we're going to ultimately do? And so it's a vetting process on both sides of the equation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ernest, I hate to let you go, but I know you have a lot to do. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I
And
just want
it's great to catch up with you. I'm glad we got a chance to see each other. And I'm so proud of Taylor, Professor Taylor, and the little twin boys. And please give her and them mine Patrice's love.
I will, and same go back at you. And
Okay.
thank you, Ernest, for being
Thank
here
you.
to BS with me today. And thanks to everyone for listening. Until the next episode, remember that everybody is different and different is good.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
We hope you enjoyed the stories shared in today's episode of BS, Beyond Stereotypes. Join us next time when another authentic personality unleashes their uniqueness on the world.